Hi, it is a privilege to welcome you to Stand Up and Redo. It is a soulful, honest podcast hosted by me, Petra Demuse, a woman over 50 who is navigating life's most tender transitions with courage and grace. I have weathered the storms of 2 divorces, raised children into adults, embraced the joy of grandchildren, and learned, perhaps for the first time, how to stand comfortably in my own solitude. Each episode explores the profound wisdom that comes with age, the lessons etched in heartache, the beauty found in unexpected places, the laughter that bubbles up in the quiet, and the peace that settles when we stop running from ourselves. With reflections on love, loss, aging, happiness, and the sacredness of this one wild and precious life, Stand Up and Redo is a companion for anyone who's learning to live fully after everything they thought would last has changed. This is a space for late bloomers, deep feelers, and fierce survivors. Come for the comfort, stay for the truth, and leave a little lighter each time. Welcome to Stand Up and Redo with Petra Demuse. I am thrilled, ecstatic, excited that you are here. And this episode coming up is about diligence and consistency. And the irony is I am on podcast, I believe, number 22. And the past 2 episodes have come out late. So my diligence and consistency has kind of flopped the past 2 weeks. But I'm not giving up and I'm not going to stop putting it out every week. I have a goal of doing this for 1 year at least and seeing how it goes and not giving up until I've done it for 1 year, and I'm bound and determined to do that. So I am going to start off by telling you 3 stories. One is going to be about a woman, a young girl, a girl I say in her 20s, working at the Coast Guard base. The second one is going to be about nursing school. And then the third story will be about yoga. And all these little stories might not be in that order, depending on how I edit this. But those are the 3 stories I want to share with you that really focus on diligence and consistency in my life and have taught me how to have it and how to maintain it. And we're going to start off with this story about nursing school. So I was pregnant when I was accepted into nursing school. I had been struggling to get into the program. It's really hard to get into. They only have so many slots in Atlantic Cape Community College in Mays Landing, New Jersey. And I had to go to the instructors and tell them that I was pregnant and couldn't use my slot that year, but could I come the next year? And they did hold my slot the following year. I was so thankful. So I had my little daughter, Sarah, October of that year, and then planned on starting school the following year. Well, think about this. You are a mom with a baby and you're starting nursing school, but then you also are pregnant. So I didn't tell them, but the second year I started, I knew I was pregnant again. My 2 daughters are 17 months apart. So the next year I went into the program and just kind of never mentioned I was pregnant. I knew if I said anything right away, they might discourage me from going to school. And in my cocky, arrogant mind, I was not going to miss any more than 2 clinicals when I had the baby. Don't ask me how I knew it. Obviously, I was really playing a game of chance there. But I did feel confident. I'm nope, I'm just going to go back to school no matter what happens. No matter what happens, I'm going to drag in this body back to school after I have my baby. Well, she was due March 23rd. School that year would be ending in May. So the fortunate thing was she ended up being born in April, late. She was over 2 weeks late, which now they would never let that happen. But back then they did. They let me deliver her that late. And I did. I delivered her during my OB rotation. I was at the same hospital doing the OB rotation and delivered her there and on a Friday night, a Friday afternoon. And all of the, actually, it was Friday morning, because all the nursing students got there and they were all looking in the window when I was having my baby, and I freaked out and was like, no, they can't watch me all through the window of the door. And this was actually pre-HIPAA too. So I did let one of them come in and watch the delivery. One of the women that I was going to school with came in and watched the delivery of Julia. I had her Friday, and I went back to school by Tuesday. So I missed 2 clinicals. I missed the day I had her, and then a Monday. And then I was very fortunate because I had their grandmother, their great grandmother actually, watched them, the 2 girls, for 1 or 2 days. I would go to school. Then my mom watched them for a day, and then I believe my mother-in-law helped me with them for a little bit too, for a day here and there. They all worked. Great grandmom didn't work, but she was older, so I didn't usually have her watch them every day. But they were very much loved, and it was wonderful to have that support. But I went back to school, and this is where the diligence and consistency comes in, because then the following year I had to go to school with 2 babies, not just one, and I was so bound and determined to only have Julia have breast milk that I would wake up at like 3, 4 in the morning and pump. So the consistency that I created with my schedule was I would get up at 4, and I made sure that I pumped. I gave myself enough time in the morning to drink a cup of coffee and do devotions, read scripture, and then get the girls up and then get to school. And I did this consistently every day. And even if I was exhausted, I still got out of bed a little bit early in order to have time to read scripture and sit at the kitchen table and drink coffee, and then of course pump. So the consistency of that kept me going. It really did. And even when I was exhausted, like I would often get the kids to bed and showered and everything, not till after 10. And then between 10 and midnight, I would study. And then sometimes I'd even study later than midnight. If I had to write a paper or something, I was up till 1 sometimes, or even getting up at 3 to finish the paper. It was insane. I think about it now. Sometimes I only had 2 to 3 hours of sleep. And the one thing that I did give up was sleep. But again, that consistently getting up every day and doing the same thing to make sure I had time to be in a regimented schedule of having time to drink coffee, to deflate, was crucial for me at that time. And nursing school was tough. I will never tell you it was easy. And I look back and think, would I ever do that again? I had to sit in the front row of the lectures, because if I sat anywhere but right up front, I instantly fell asleep. And I remember even in the front row, I'd be sitting there like staring at the instructor, trying to like focus on her like 100% so that I wouldn't fall asleep, and still falling asleep and being concerned that they were going to think I was using drugs. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm like a drug addict up here falling asleep. But I was just so exhausted. And I have to share that story with you, because I think about that and the insanity of it. And what kept me sane was doing something with diligence and consistency. And it was that morning routine that saved me. And I wanted to share that with you. So that's my nursing school spiel. And now on to the next story. I used to work at the Coast Guard base when I was in my 20s. It was my second job. I worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I was the nurse for the recruits who were in training. And the recruits that I would see were the ones that either had really severe injuries that took them out of training, or they were usually had some kind of a mental not disorder, they had some kind of a breakdown, whether emotional breakdown or a true diagnosis of a mental disorder. But either way, I was their nurse, and every night there was a different number of recruits. And I, being the night nurse from 11 to 7, would get to see them. They were still kind of awake sometimes at 11, but then by the, sometimes when I come in, they'd all be asleep. They were so tired because they were just exhausted from training. or whatever sickness they had. But I remember when I was at that age, believe it or not, one thing that we were talking about was I went from working in the day in this high energy performance, all about performance and time management and doing as many surgeries and procedures as we could at the same day surgery center at the hospital. And I did that in the daytime. And then at night, I would go to the Coast Guard base where I had struggled with boredom because I'd get there at 11. I'd do my rounds and then I'd write my notes on each patient. But then by like 12:30 at night, I was completely finished. And I didn't really have anything to do. I mean, I would walk around and just look at the recruits like every hour with a flashlight just to make sure that they were okay. But other than that, there wasn't much to do until morning meds. When they woke up, then I'd pass out whatever medications they need, which, think about it, these are all young, like really young teenagers or young 20s. So the meds that they were on were barely anything. And it was just a really simplistic, easy job. And I remember struggling with the nighttime coming in, and there was no routine for me. It was like I had to try to figure out what to do with myself from 12:30 to like 5:30 or 6 when the recruits started to wake up. And it was a struggle. I had 5 or 6 hours of just this quiet by myself, awake in a ward that was not even warm and cozy. It was very cold and sterile. And just feeling I needed to create something to get me through the night, like a consistent pattern or a program or something. And I did. I created a program. Like I would come in and everything was very methodical that I would do for each hour. I'd have late night TV on in the background to keep me like going for a little bit. And then I would go and look at all the recruits because a lot of them would have their teeth pulled, or they were there for an injury. Like it was sad. Some of them had would maybe have a fracture or like some kind of a really bad muscle pull or some kind of a break or something that would happen to them during training. But then it was so heartbreaking because they were the ones that really wanted to be in training. Then you'd have patients or I guess they were considered patients. You'd have recruits who maybe were going through a first diagnosis of some kind of a schizophrenia because they had never had a schizophrenic episode before until they came into the training base, and then the stress of it created an episode for them where they would start to hear voices or see images or see people talking to them. So a lot of the recruits were new diagnoses, or some of them had never been diagnosed with, they might have had a heart murmur or a congenital heart disorder. And then they were never diagnosed till they came into training because maybe their parents didn't have a lot of money, or they never were in sports, or they just never had any reason to find out that they had some kind of a heart condition. And it was really interesting. The patients that we had on the ward were a whole array of different patients, different recruits. And I learned to start, because of the extreme boredom of sitting there at this table by myself in the ward, working and being bored out of my mind. I created a whole pattern of what each hour I would do. And I remember even during lunch break, I'd have a lunch break at midnight or whatever. I would go for my 30 minutes and they had a gym there. So I would lift at the gym, and then I might do, so sad. I would do 5 laps around the whole, there was a whole big, it was a circle, but it was very creepy because the ward was this giant building. It was huge. It was maybe 3 floors, or 2 floors. And it was just this big old building. And I remember as all the lights were off, which was the lights were just off, it's nighttime. So I walked around with a flashlight, which is another depressing reason to think that you need a routine to keep you sane. But the routine kept me sane, and diligently doing it every night and having a routine kept me on par with not losing my mind, because I'm a very high energy change person that is not good with consistency. I'm much better with change and challenges and strategic planning. So to have a job where every day I had to do the exact same thing, I only stayed there for, I think, 9 months, just because of the fact that I realized that was not the job for me. I am not good with routine and consistency. But in order to stay sane, I created a routine, and I did a really good job with that. And when I was there, I remember some of the older nurses, I would not have much connection with any of the other nurses except for at report. So I would come in at 11, and then the nurses that were there from 3 to 11 would be leaving. So that would be like when we'd give report, then we'd kind of connect and talk about different things. And I remember there were 2 nurses that were reading a book about a woman that was talking about consistency, and she was sharing in her book, because back then we actually read books because we didn't have the internet or reels or anything, or podcasts. We didn't have podcasts. Oh my gosh. I have to say I love technology today. I love that we have all this at our fingertips that we didn't have back then. But back then you read books. So the book that we were all reading together, we all decided to read this book, but it was a woman who talked about consistently every night doing every dish in your sink and never leaving any dishes dirty. And that way, when you woke up in the morning, you'd have your, just everything would be clean and ready for the next day. And we were all talking about that particular process. And I can tell you that is one thing that I am obsessed with, is doing dishes every night. Obsessed with it. And I know my mom came over to visit me one night, and she's like, "Oh, honey, I'll finish the dishes for you. Don't worry about it." So I did. I thought, okay, well, Mom, I'll let you finish the dishes, because I had so much other stuff to do. And I went off and did my own thing, and then I fell asleep. And then I woke up and for some reason went downstairs maybe to get a drink of water from the kitchen. And there were the pots and pans that she must have filled up with soapy water to soak. And I guess she was thinking she did all the dishes and got everything put away, but left maybe 3 pans in the sink soaking, which I found out the next day she was going to just do them in the morning. Well, for me, that was like a psycho. I'm like, nope, can't leave any dishes in my sink. Every night I have to do the dishes, every single one, and then wipe out the sink. And it's it's not a crazy thing. It's a thing that in the morning when you come down and whatever you do in the morning, you have this crisp, clean sink, and you're not working backwards in life. You're working forwards, right? You're not going backwards in the morning to do the dishes from last night. You're moving forward with your new day with no dishes in the sink. So, advice to all people: it is a very liberating feeling to make sure that you can always see your sink at night before you go to bed, and that it's all wiped out, and that every dish is washed. It is a great feeling. If you don't do it, I'm just going to strongly suggest that you do that. It is just liberating. And I was doing the dishes at 2 a.m, and my mom comes out. She's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Because I don't know if she heard me. I was trying to be quiet, but I said, "Mom, you don't understand. I can't leave dishes in the sink. So even though you're telling me you're going to do them, if you're not doing them because I also get up earlier than anybody else. I'm like, so I would be the one waking up to see those dirty dishes in the morning. So I'm like, nope, we have to do every dish before we go to bed." And I think she looked at me like, "Oh, you're crazy." You're crazy. Because honestly, as a little girl growing up in my home was so first, it was a very loving home and it was a beautiful home, but it was not, there was no rhyme or reason or regimen. It was very much laissez-faire and just super like whatever. And I do remember when I left my home, like I think I talked about this one man. I remember I had a name for him. It wasn't his real name, but he was training for a triathlon. And I remember when I was like 17 or 16 or however I was when I met him, I think I was 16 because I wasn't driving yet, seeing his dedication and his diligence with training and consistency with his training for his triathlon gave me, he was, like I said, a mentor. And I really believe that it was because I didn't know about how to be regimented before that time. And I learned. And maybe I did, but I was learning to consistently do the same thing every day to be prepared for the next day and to have one up on everything you do. And I'm telling you, like, even I used to be that waitress late at night and ride my bike home. I think I remember telling you all in one of my other earlier podcasts, I would ride my bike home after being a bus girl at night. But ironically, guess what I did when I got home? I had pulled out the ironing board and I ironed my uniform for the next day. And I rolled it up and I put it in my bag. And it sounds insane, but if I didn't do it that night while I was wide awake and all wired from coming home from my job, I wouldn't even think about doing it the next morning because I would just not be thinking about that. So like, it was really nice to just keep a regimen, keep a schedule, always do the same thing. And I truly think that keeps people going. I know what I have to share with you, and this is like medicine, truly like medicine. About 2 years ago, I was a runner. I was running and I was also biking a lot. I was doing a lot of cardio and exercising as my main form of exercise, usually after work. I'm a nighttime exerciser, not a morning exerciser. And I was noticing that my body, I'm getting older, over 50, that my body was just really stiff. And I had a lot of I did a lot of computer work, and I carry a lot of stress in my back. So my back and neck sometimes would get so tense that I'd have an impingement in my right arm that even my little pinky and my one finger would go numb, and my neck would just always be like turned sideways. I sound like but it would be like almost so tight and stiff that I didn't have full range of motion. So, and then I also in the morning when I would get out of bed noticed that my heels would be so tight, almost like maybe just so tight that from running and biking or whatever, that I couldn't even I would shuffle a little bit when I would get out of bed at first. I sound like I'm falling apart. But I was getting just stiff. And I was like, okay, I do not want to be walking around the grocery store, bending over, holding onto the shopping cart, all getting stiffer and stiffer. And I didn't want to have, and then I'd gone to the doctor too, and they mentioned I had neck. He said I'd gone to the doctor for something else that I was dealing with, which is a whole nother podcast. But I was at the neurologist, and he said, you have real significant neck disease. You're getting some arthritis in your neck. And he's like, you might want to do stretches to try to keep your neck straight. You're going to get that hump or whatever that you get. And so he was telling me, he even told me it was interesting to maybe start going to the chiropractor. And I thought that was interesting because he was a medical doctor, and sometimes medical doctors don't ever want you to go to the chiropractor, or don't think that that's an option. But he thought that was a good idea. I didn't go to the chiropractor, which might be bad, but I did start doing, and this is, again, directly related to consistency and diligence. I was never a big yoga person, but I started just thinking, all right, I have to fix this problem, and how am I going to fix this? So I had yoga mats, and I did a lot of yoga. I didn't do a lot of yoga. I never did yoga. I do like random yoga class with friends, maybe like once every few months. So yoga was not a consistent part of my life. But I took this yoga mat out and I laid it down on my bedroom floor and started just doing like random stretches. And then I started to realize, wow, that felt really good. So I started to actually watch yoga. I took my yoga mat and got up earlier. Again, remember what I said about realizing I needed to get up early when I was in nursing school to just have time to read the coffee and read scripture, or not read coffee, drink coffee and read scripture. But I had realized I needed to get up a little bit earlier to do this. So I did. And I took my yoga mat into the other room and where the TV is, and would do like 30 minutes of yoga with Adrian, I believe. And then my son was a big yoga guy, not a big yoga guy, but he did yoga consistently. And he goes, Mom, why don't we try to do 30 days of yoga? And of course, any kind of challenge for me, it's on. Like if a friend ever needs somebody to do something with, I'm the person to say, hey, would you do this with me? Because I like a challenge. And so I said, yes, let's do 30 days of yoga with Adrian. Well, I felt so amazing after that 30 days of yoga that 2 years ago, this has now been a part of my life at least 5 days a week. I mean, there's times I go 3 days without doing it, and then I really feel a difference. But I can tell you, I get up in the morning. Matter of fact, after I get finished recording this part of the podcast, I'm going to go in with my yoga mat, and it takes me about 13 to 20 minutes to do my little yoga routine, and I do the exact routine all the time. And as a matter of fact, I like my little routine so much that even if I do something on the television, like extra, like I do a 30-minute thing on TV or follow you along on TV, I still like to do my little routine, because it's just like I don't feel complete unless I do it. So I am an advocate for this. It took away my neck and back impingements and pain completely. Like I go to work now on the computer every day, even if I'm at the center when I travel, I'm still on the computer every day. I drive for hours, which can cause neck and back pain. I don't have that tightness and my heels. And the interesting thing is, if I go like over 3 days without doing it, I start feeling that tightness and almost like kind of arthritic type pain in my heels again. But if I do yoga consistently and I don't miss it, for any more than 2 or 3 days, I don't have that heel pain. I pop out of bed and walk right to the bathroom without shuffling my feet. And I'm trying so hard. I'm always like telling my mom, I'm like, Mom, you have to do this. This is like medicine, because I know she shuffles around and I can see her getting older. Not that everybody's going to get older, right? Everyone's going to have problems. And my goodness, you could even probably have an injury doing yoga. But honestly, I didn't have that payoff. I think that 30 days with Adrian and that challenge from Austin was what really made me realize the consistency of it. And I am a big advocate. First, I'm telling you about this thing that you can take advantage of that's free. And another thing that was really cool about doing the yoga, I noticed, it's kind of fun. I noticed I have these little muscles in my feet that I never had. I'm 50 years old, and I'm looking down at my feet and I have these muscles that popping out and are strong in my feet and ankles, and that I never had before. I've had the muscle there, but I just never saw it before until I started doing my yoga consistently. Now I know it's been 2 years because I remember the time I started, it was in November, oh my gosh, it's actually been longer than 2 years that I've been doing this yoga. It was November of 2022 that I started doing it, because I remember that month that I started doing it was November 2022, and now we are going into 26. So, so I am a big advocate for yoga, but also for consistency and diligence and the payoff of that. And I think the reason I do it so regularly is because I know that it took away my pain. And think about what I've done, as opposed to if I was getting more and more stiff and more arthritic over that time period, and thinking about taking medicine maybe, and I did. I mean, what about if I was taking like anti-inflammatories for that neck and back and shoulder pain, which I've had through the years. And I did go to a chiropractor when I was younger it's horrible. I don't go to the chiropractor now, but I did go to the chiropractor for those neck and impingements. And, it did help a little bit, but it didn't help like the yoga does. So that's another thing with consistency and diligence that I wanted to share with you. And I also hope that you try to do yoga, even if you do 5 or 10 minutes. The payoff is great. Okay, here's my stand up and redo. I'm going to stack on top of my morning yoga my 10-minute abs and my 3-minute plank consistently. And then I'm going to add a daily devotion, 1 chapter every day of the New Testament for 260 days until I get it completely read. And then I'm going to learn Italian. I am going to learn Italian by every single day doing Duolingo and reading books that are written in Italian. So there's my stand up and redo for right this very minute. For life, my life stand up and redo is just to move forward each day and to consistently and diligently do something positive each day and not let myself just slip away. There you go. That's my stand up and redo. Thought it was pretty good. And I hope that it's a takeaway for you, and that you, even if you just get one little bit of something positive in your life from my podcast, it would just bring me so much joy. Thank you. Hi, I'd like to give credit to Sarah Gephardt for the cover page of this podcast. This podcast is a work based on the personal experiences, reflections, and memories of the speaker. The events described are true to the best of the speaker's knowledge and recollection. Some names, locations, identifying characteristics, and timelines have been changed or altered to protect the privacy of the individuals involved. In some cases, composite characters have been created or dialogue has been reconstructed based on memory. The intention of this podcast is not to defame, malign, or harm any individual or entity. Rather, it is to share the speaker's journey with honesty, vulnerability, and integrity. Any opinions expressed are solely those of the speaker and are not intended as statements of fact regarding any person, group, or organization. Listeners should keep in mind that human memory is inherently subjective and selective, and while every effort has been made to ensure accuracy, this podcast reflects the speaker's perspective and truth. Thank you.